Gopi Janavallabha Giridharadhari Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Jai Om Vishnu Padma Nam Sapardi Kujari Stotras Dr. Shri Shrimani Samangas A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namachai Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Natakoti Vaishnavini Ki Jai New Govardhana Temple Ki Jai Gantara Srimad-Bhagavatam Ki Jai Go Premanandini All voices to some of the verses All voices to Shri Shri Guru and Gaura Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namaskritam Naram Charam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. This morning we're reading from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, Text 1 to 2. Please repeat after me. Prachoditayena Pura Saraswati Vitanvata Jasya Satim Smritim Hadi Salakshana Pradurabhut Kilashyata Same Rishinam Rishabha Prasidatam Prachoditayena Pura Saraswati Vitanvata Jasya Satim Smritim Hadi Swalakshana Pradurabhut Kilashyata Same Rishinam Rishibha Prasidatam Prachoditayena Pura Saraswati Vitanvata Jasya Satim Smritim Hridi Swalakshana Pradurabhut Kilashyata Same Rishinam Rishabha Prasidatam Prachodita inspired. Yena, by whom? Buddha, in the beginning of creation. Saraswati, the goddess of learning. Vitanvita, amplified. Ajasya, of Brahma, the first created living being. Satin Smritin, potent memory. Hridi, in the heart. Sva, in his own. Lakshana, aiming at. Pradurabhut, was generated. Kila, as if. Asyata, from the mouth. Saha, he. Me, unto me. Rishinam, of the teachers. Rishabha, the chief. Prasidatam, be pleased. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. May the Lord, who in the beginning of the creation amplified the potent knowledge of Brahma from within his heart and inspired him with full knowledge of creation and of his own self, and who appeared to be generated from the mouth of Brahma, be pleased with me. Please repeat. May the Lord, who in the beginning of the creation amplified the potent knowledge of Brahma from within his heart and inspired him with full knowledge of creation and of his own self, and who appeared to be generated from the mouth of Brahma, be pleased with me. Purport. As we have already discussed here and before, the Lord, as the supersoul of all living beings from Brahma to the insignificant ant, endows all with the required knowledge, potent in every living being. A living being is sufficiently potent to possess knowledge from the Lord in the proportion of 50/64, or 78% of the full knowledge acquirable. Since the living being is constitutionally part and parcel of the Lord, he is unable to assimilate all the knowledge that the Lord possesses himself. In the conditioned state, the living being is subject to forget everything after a change of body, known as death. This potent knowledge is again inspired by the Lord from within the heart of every living being, and it is known as the awakening of knowledge, for it is comparable to awakening from sleep or unconsciousness. This awakening of knowledge is under the full control of the Lord, and therefore we find in the practical world different grades of knowledge in different persons. This awakening of knowledge is neither an automatic nor a material interaction. The supply source is the Lord himself, Dhiyampati. For even Brahma is also subject to this regulation of the Supreme Creator. In the beginning of the creation, Brahma is born first, without any father and mother, because before Brahma there were no other living beings. Brahma is born from the lotus, which grows from the abdomen of the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and therefore he is known as Aja. This Brahma, or Aja, is also a living being, part and parcel of the Lord. But being the most pious devotee of the Lord, Brahma is inspired by the Lord to create, subsequent to the main creation by the Lord, through the agency of material nature. Therefore, neither the material nature nor Brahma is independent of the Lord. The material scientists can merely observe the reactions of the material nature without understanding the directions behind such activities, as a child can see the action of electricity without any knowledge of the powerhouse engineer. This imperfect knowledge of the material scientists is due to a poor fund of knowledge. The Vedic knowledge was therefore first impregnated within Brahma, and it appears that Brahma distributed the Vedic knowledge. Brahma is undoubtedly the speaker of the Vedic knowledge, but actually he was inspired by the Lord to receive such transcendental knowledge, as it directly descends from the Lord. The Vedas are therefore called apaurushaya, or not imparted by any created being. Before the creation, the Lord was there, Narayana Paro Vyakta, and therefore the words spoken by the Lord are vibrations of transcendental sound. There is a gulf of difference between the two qualities of sound, namely prakrita and aprakrita. The physicists can deal only with the prakrita sound, or sound vibrated in the material sky, and therefore we must know that the Vedic sounds recorded in symbolic expressions cannot be understood by anyone within the universe unless and until one is inspired by the vibrations of supernatural aprakrita sound, which descends in the chain of disciplic succession from the Lord to Brahma, from Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyasa, and so on. No mundane scholar can translate or reveal the true import of the Vedic mantras, hymns. They cannot be understood unless one is inspired or initiated by the authorized spiritual master. The original spiritual master is the Lord himself, and the succession comes down through the sources of Parampara, as clearly stated in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, unless one receives the transcendental knowledge from the authorized Parampara, one should be considered useless. Vipala mata. Even though one may be greatly qualified in the mundane advancements of arts or science. Shukadeva Goswami is praying from the Lord by dint of being inspired from within by the Lord, so that he could rightly explain the facts and figures of creation, as inquired by Maharaj Parikshit. A spiritual master is not a theoretical speculator like the mundane scholar, but is Shrotriyam Brahma Nishtam. Shrotriyam Brahma Nishtam. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Prabhupada for giving us this amazing purport. The whole Srimad-Bhagavatam is such a gift, such a wealth of information and knowledge, and we owe our lives to give back to him for giving us this information. So, thank you. This is a really nice verse, going into detail of the creation of the universe, which is a very specific description of the creation of the universe. It's very different, as Srila Prabhupada points out, to the conception of most people in this world who are following the conceptions of modern science. So in this purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the Vedic knowledge, where the Vedic knowledge comes from. Where the Vedic knowledge comes from. That's the whole theme of this verse, actually. Sarasvati, excuse me, Sarasvati Prachodita Yena Pura Sarasvati. in the beginning, this was inspired, the Vedic knowledge, in the form of Saraswati. It was from the heart of Lord Brahma. And then Brahma then spoke the Vedas. The Vedas come out from Lord Brahma's mouth. But actually, as this verse is saying, this knowledge appears to be generated from the mouth of Brahma, but actually it comes from the Lord himself. That's why in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the Vedic knowledge is aparushaya. Aparushaya. It doesn't come from any created being. Or in other words, it's superhuman. It's not concocted within any living being's mind. It's called Shabda Brahman, spiritual sound that comes down from higher authorities. Whereas the science of modern science, it is a system of understanding the nature of reality by using our observations with our limited senses. We can look out into the sky with a telescope, try to figure out the arrangements of the stars, what's out there, if there's any higher beings. Interesting to note that the US government is officially making statements that there are higher beings out there in the world. There's official documents coming out which proves that the Vedas have been right all along, that there's more going on in this universe than what appears through our limited instruments and senses. It appears with our limited senses that the conception has come about that this earth is the only place in the whole universe where there is life. This conception that the bodies that we're in is our identity, and after the body disappears, there's nothing. This is the main conception which drives the current civilization to continue to try to enjoy the bodily situation as much as possible during this life. There's a common saying that the young people in America have made up as YOLO, Y-O-L-O. You only live once. You only live once. So enjoy as much as possible. And this conception is backed up by modern science. There's no observational proof of life after death. We use our senses, we use our instruments to see, and there's no proof of the soul. So we don't exist. It's just combinations of chemicals interacting in the brain. This is consciousness. This is awareness. There is no self. It's just combinations of chemicals that come together to experience the phenomenon of this one lifetime, and then after the body goes, it's all disintegrates into nothingness. This is what's observable with our senses, but the Vedic conception gives a very different conception. Beyond the self not existing, also what doesn't exist in the modern conception of science. What also doesn't exist is a conscious source. All that exists is what we can observe, the material energy, and there's no source behind it. As Srila Prabhupada says here, he gives the analogy. Where is it? I have to find it in the purport. He explains that second. I'm looking at the wrong purport. The material scientist can merely observe the reactions of material nature without understanding the direction behind such activities. As a child can see the action of electricity without any knowledge of the powerhouse engineer. So Prabhupada gives us this analogy of a child observing electricity and not understanding that there's a powerhouse there's a source of the electricity that's coming. And similarly, the material scientist is observing the interactions of the material nature without understanding the source, the energetic source of the material nature. There's a saying from the Puranas, Atha Shri Krishna Namadi Na Bhavet Karyam Indriya Sevam Mukehi Jivada Swayam Eva Spuratyada. To explain that Krishna's existence, his name, his form, his qualities cannot be perceived by our material senses, but by engaging in the service in bhakti, beginning with the tongue, chanting his holy names, we begin to understand Krishna's existence. How could we possibly understand the existence of a supreme being without the help of superior knowledge, just with our senses? There's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita that explains that when Krishna descends, when the personality of Godhead descends in a human-like form, there's a tendency to completely misunderstand or not be able to understand. Even when the Supreme Lord appears right in front of us, we can't perceive his existence because of material conditioning. So we may see the form, but to understand the situation of the Supreme Lord it's just not possible with our senses. It's not possible for a human mind and senses to perceive. It's even in the perfectional stage, as stated in this purport, that even in the perfectional stage, we can only perceive a certain percentage of the existence of the Lord, only a certain percentage. Anyway, so we have to use what is called the Shabda Brahman, the Vedic knowledge, to understand. This is the first point of spiritual life, is to accept the authorities of the Vedas. That we start seeing the world through the Vedas. We stop trying to understand just through our mind and our senses, and we start contemplating this descending knowledge that comes. And what's the best descending knowledge? Does anybody know? At the current time, the best descending knowledge that's available to us currently?
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia is Yadu's answer. Spiritual master, that's a good answer. Yes, in terms of a specific scripture, the best form of this spiritual knowledge is the Srimad-Bhagavatam. This has been elaborately established by our previous acharyas, specifically Jiva Goswami. He was the first follower of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to make a systematic study available of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and he explained very thoroughly in that the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the highest Pramana of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that the Vedas mostly deal with the material nature. mostly deals with rituals for advancing in fruitive activities to get something, do religious rituals to get something. Most of the Vedas deal with that. And above the Vedas, then there's a section of the Vedas, the Upanishads, that deal with the philosophy, understanding the nature of reality. And a summary, a conclusive study of the Upanishads was given by the author of the Vedas, Vyasadeva, as the Vedanta Sutras. The Vedanta Sutras are a collection of sutras that give a summary study of the conclusions of the Vedas. That's what Vedanta means, the conclusion of the Vedas. So, Jiva Goswami in the Satsandarbhas gives a beginning to the Gaudiya understanding of Vedanta. He just gives a brief, he gives a commentary to the first 4 verses of the Vedanta Sutra, and then he proves through his commentary that the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the answer to the same questions that are asked in the Vedanta Sutra. What is the source of all beings? What is this material world? What is the relationship between them? Etc. He proves that the Bhagavatam is directly related to that, and it's given by the same author, Vyasadeva. So, Vyasadeva was instructed by Narada Muni. Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedas. The Vedas were, as we're hearing in this verse, given by the Lord to Brahma, the first created being, and then it's descending down through these exalted, actually superhuman beings, to Lord Brahma, to Narada, to Vyasa. In the current situation, Vyasadeva put it into writing the Vedas, the 4 Vedas, and the Puranas and the Itihasas, and he still wasn't satisfied. So Narada Muni instructed him that you haven't clearly glorified Krishna directly, so that's why he compiled the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So the Srimad-Bhagavatam is proven through that interaction between Narada and Vyasadeva, that the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the conclusive commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. Because Vyasadeva compiled the Vedas, he compiled the Vedanta Sutra, still wasn't satisfied. He heard from his guru that he should, because he's not satisfied, he didn't conclusively reveal the absolute truth in a clear way. And because he didn't do that, he instructed him to clearly reveal Krishna's glories. And that's the product of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is what we're reading now. And that's the proof that the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the highest Pramana of the entire Vedic canon. Anything that you can say Vedas, the whole tradition of ancient India, the conclusion is the Srimad-Bhagavatam. There's other people, many other schools that have different ideas, different interpretations of the Vedas, of the Vedanta Sutra. They even give commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita and other literatures. But we can analyze it. What does the philosophy that the Srimad-Bhagavatam establishes? Can anybody say what exactly is the philosophy that the Srimad-Bhagavatam establishes? Yeah.
Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam.
Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. That's good. That's considered one of the essential verses. Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. Yes. Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. That's the philosophy of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Does anybody know where that is written in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, the term Achintya Veda Veda Tattva? Trick question? It's not. The first usage of that term Achintya Veda Veda Tattva is from Jiva Goswami in his Satsandarbhas. So he analyzed it. He analyzed the teachings of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and he created this term to make it clear what is the teachings of the philosophical doctrine of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and in turn that also means the doctrine of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's the purpose of Jiva Goswami's mission, is to prove that the teachings of the Srimad-Bhagavatam are the highest Pramana of the Vedas, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches the message of Srimad-Bhagavatam, and therefore Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings are the highest. So, this Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, what does that mean? What does it mean? Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. Simultaneously one and different. Yes. Achintya means inconceivable, Veda abheda. One and not one. Same and not the same. So what is it saying? That what is the same and what is not the same? But what is it being compared to? What is the one and what is the other thing that is the same and not the same? The soul and God. The soul and God, given by Krishna Kirtan Prabhu. The soul and God. That's one aspect. The soul and God. What else? There's more to it than that. The oneness and difference of this philosophy.
Cosmos and the absolute truth.
The cosmos and the absolute truth. Yes. Yes. Energies and energetic. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. These are all proper conceptions. There's the verse in the Bhagavad Gita that says, after many years of understanding this knowledge, one comes to the conclusion that Vasudeva is everything. Vasudeva sarvam iti. Everything is Vasudeva. So what does that mean? Does that mean that this is Vasudeva? This table is Vasudeva. Everything is Vasudeva. It's a statement in the Bhagavad Gita. Am I Vasudeva? Am I the Supreme Lord? Everything is Vasudeva. So after many years of knowledge, we come to this conclusion: everything is Krishna. Yes and no. Correct. This is Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. It's in the Bhagavad Gita, right there. It pervades the message of the Bhagavatam. That the things that are being compared is the energy and the energetic, as was said, or Bhagavan and his Shaktis. There's this oneness and difference between the source, Bhagavan, and his Shaktis. And so that means the source of everything, all the energies of the entire creation are Krishna. And they are also not Krishna. They're his energies. They're inconceivably Krishna and also not Krishna. They also have their individual identity. And that goes for, there's the Shaktis, so there's Bhagavan, the source of the Shaktis, all the energies, and then there's the Shakti. And then the Shakti is broken into three categories. three categories that emanate from Bhagavan. Does everybody know the three categories of the Shakti? Yeah, Bahiranga, that's the external energy, Tatashta Shakti, and Antaranga Shakti. So this is the analysis of the nature of reality. This supreme person, and he possesses these Shaktis. He emanates out the creation. This is the beauty of the Vedas, that it explains everything so clearly. In any other system of religion, to have this type of detailed information of the nature of reality, it's just not there. You see it, the philosophy of Christianity, they say that God exists. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. What does that mean though? Srila Prabhupada breaks it down in one phrase, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just that one phrase gives us so much more to work with than just the phrase God or Father. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, that's the English translation of Bhagavan. So, what does that mean? The details of it. It means that there's a Supreme Person that everything comes from. Everything emanates from a Supreme Person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everything, and that everything that comes from it, that's broken down into three categories of Shakti, the energy that comes from this energetic source. And those energies are broken down to three categories. The details of that are so wonderful to understand. The external energy, the internal energy, and the intermediate energy. Where are we? Tatashta, yeah, the marginal energy. This philosophy is also pointed at within Christianity. This concept in all other traditions, they're trying to understand the same concept, but this philosophy of the Srimad-Bhagavatam explains it so clearly. The whole situation is explained in that way, that the analogy in Christianity is Satan and sin. In the Bhagavatam, it's not Satan, but it's Maya. This is the external energy. The similar conception is there in Christianity, that there's we, the living entities, are there, and we're in a compromised situation. We're being attracted by this Lucifer, distracting us from the kingdom of God. So that philosophy is there in the Christianity, but it's the specificness in the Bhagavatam is much more clear. What it is, what is Satan? It's not an angry devilish figure. It's Maya. It's illusion. It's the material energy. We're attracted. We're bewildered. The Tatashta is bewildered and attracted by the material energy. And the Tatashta Shakti, what that means is that we are in between. We have this eternal position of freedom to choose between these two different Shaktis, of these emanations of the Lord, of Bhagavan. The Antaranga Shakti, the internal energy, and the Bahiranga Shakti, the external energy. So the process of bhakti is the situation where the Tatashta Shakti, the living entities, are choosing to become absorbed in the Antaranga Shakti, the internal potency of the Supreme Lord, rather than being distracted by the external energy of the Supreme Lord. The process of bhakti is the process of bringing the Antaranga Shakti into the material world. And the more we become absorbed in these activities of bhakti, the more our consciousness becomes filled with, and we become closer to this internal energy. What is the nature of the internal energy? The nature of the internal energy is Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge, full of awareness, and full of bliss. And the nature of the external energy is the exact opposite. Temporary, full of ignorance, and full of unhappiness. In the Bhagavad Gita it says that dukkhalaya ashashvatam is temporary and full of miseries. But the spiritual world is eternal, full of awareness and full of bliss. So the process of bhakti is to once we get this information, is to reawaken is to reawaken or to come back to this natural position. It's explained that naturally the Tatastha Shakti is more closely related with the internal energy. The living entities are more closely related with the internal energy of the Supreme Lord, and that the external energy is not a conducive platform for the happiness of the living entity. So the process of bhakti is to make that transition back. As Srila Prabhupada makes this highly philosophical point very easily understood in the term back to Godhead. Back to Godhead. We're going to go back to Godhead. This is a very highly philosophical term made easy. That's Srila Prabhupada's brilliance, that that his purports are filled with these statements that carry so much potency that when we read them, we don't really know how much work has gone into the acharyas bringing the message down in an understandable way. And the phrases that Prabhupada uses are so brilliant. Back to Godhead. That simple statement clears up what I just said. The living entity, not where he's supposed to be, going back to where he's supposed to be, back to home, back to Godhead, which is where it's more natural for us to be, where we'll be more happy, and it's where we can only be happy, actually. So I think I'll stop there. I guess just one more thought, that this concept of bhakti is a product of the Antaranga Shakti, the internal potency of the Lord. And all the angas of bhakti are also aspects of the Antaranga Shakti. So Krishna's name, form, qualities, activities, these are transcendental activities. They're not of this world. So that's why in the process of deity worship, the form of Krishna, the elements that they're made out of are material. But the process of deity worship carries the potency of the internal energy. When the devotees, who are the highly advanced devotees, come and give instructions how to worship the deities, how to cast the form, how to dress them, how to worship them, and the form of Krishna, the description of the form of Krishna is not material. So that then when we engage in the process of deity worship, we're starting to get glimpses of the internal potency. Well, the material energy is being transformed, the external energy is being transformed through the process of bhakti to the internal potency. And that's why, so the whole goal of bhakti is to absorb our consciousness in the internal potency that's available as much as possible in the form of meditating on the form, of the Lord and as the deity, and also especially meditating on the name of Krishna. The name of Krishna, especially in this age, is Golokera Premadana Harinam Sankirtana. So the name of Krishna is carrying the potency of the internal energy of the Lord. The name of Krishna. This is one of the main ways we can keep our consciousness absorbed in the internal energy, the Antaranga Shakti of the Supreme Lord through His name. The more we absorb our consciousness in these aspects of the internal potency, the more we become transformed, and the more we forget about the external energy, the whole situation of the external energy that's created by the external energy, which is Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. It's full of miseries, primarily because it's temporary. So there is some happiness in the material world, but because it's temporary, ultimately even the happiness in this world is a source of misery, because it has to come to an end. Jehi samsparsa jabhoga dukkha yonai evate. That the happiness comes from this contact with the body that we temporarily have with the objects of the senses. And when the objects of the senses and the body are taken away from us, then we get dukkha, unhappiness, misery, which culminates in death. Death is the main culprit of misery in the material world. And that's the culmination of the temporariness, the temporary nature of the material situation, that everything is temporary. So anything that brings us happiness in this temporary realm also ultimately brings suffering. So the more we absorb ourselves in the internal energy through the Bhagavatam, the holy name, the form of Krishna, the qualities, activities, the more we become uplifted out of this Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam situation, and we regain our position as the part and parcels of Bhagavan, which is the natural position of the living entities. I'll stop there. If there's any comments or questions, could we get Mike by chance?
Where did Srila Goswami take that term HG Giridhari from? Did he just make it up himself? Or?
Well, I heard from Radhika Raman, who's a scholar, devotee. He works with the team of devotees to study the works of the acharyas, and he said that that's the first place that Jiva Goswami's work. So that's what he said, that Jiva Goswami created the term. Yeah. Good.
Created the term, but only following the teachings of Chaitanya Prabhu.
Yeah. Well, it's a term. No, he cites his sources to explain what he means. That's what the whole Sandarbhas are. Is he explains that he didn't make up the philosophy. It comes from the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and quoting primarily from the commentaries of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. It's just like Prabhupada. He makes a phrase in English, back to Godhead, or I'm not sure if that, he made so many terms, but what? What's that? made so many terms, but he's just recreating the philosophy. He's not changing the philosophy. He's putting it to words so people can understand it better.
Basically, what Bhagavatam did is that he created a sutra.
We can't hear what you're saying. No, can't hear.
Officially on the mic.
Basically, what Jiva Goswami did, he created a sutra, which is a condensed explanation of the teachings of Srimad-Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's applied teachings of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So he condenses that because he understood the essence of it. So he creates a sutra, and sutra is like the first aphorism of the Vedanta Sutra.
Yeah.
Atato Brahmatigyasa.
Yeah.
So the Atato Brahmatigyasa comes from a line of meditation. This is what you should be doing now. So it comes out in 2 or 3 words. So Jiva Goswami understood all the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, his master's teaching, the Chaitamrita, and expressed it in those words, few words, which shows the expertise and the understanding of the disciple.
Yeah, and then its effect on generations and generations, where now we come and we say Chinta Veda Veda Tattva, and we're like, yeah, that makes sense. Chinta Veda Veda Tattva, yeah. Like it's like such an elaborate philosophy, but it's like one term to.
We knew that before.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Chinta Veda Veda, perfect. Yeah. Anything else? We got one more up here. Got a couple minutes, 1 minute.
I was asking myself the other day, when we vocation to Srimad Bhagavatam, and we offer obeisances to Vasudev, Saraswati,
Narayan Rishi.
Why Narayan Rishi?
Not sure. I'd have to look into it more. Yeah, I don't have a conclusive answer to that question. Does anybody have? Why Narayan Rishi? Narayan Rishi is a very special avatar, descent of Krishna. I just know some basic things, but I don't know too much about it. It's a good question. Maybe we can look it up and talk about it.
The combination of Krishna and Arjuna.
Krishna and Arjuna.
Wherever it is Krishna and Arjuna, is the same teachings. So therefore, we offer obeisances to them because they are the teaching. They are the combination of Arjuna being the disciple of Krishna being the supreme teacher. Whenever that combination is there, then you understand the truth. Therefore, we offer obeisances to that principle.
Yeah, thank you.
And they're still existing.
They're still present. They have a very important role on the Earth planet, yeah. Padma said. Okay, thank you all for your attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gamcha Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanande Haribo.